I will fight.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. You have joined us for our weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I'm State Senator Amanda Chase, your weekly host. And I actually represent most of Chesterfield, all of Colonial Heights, and all of Amelia. And my state office is actually at the state capitol. Isn't that original? In downtown Richmond. Sorry, I'm in a punchy mood today. Wednesday, the General Assembly is going to reconvene for special session. It's this coming Wednesday, April the 11th, and we're going to be addressing our Commonwealth budget, and nothing has really changed at this point. I understand Senator Wagner has come out with some creative solutions, which the Republican caucus will not endorse, but I give him an A for creativity, but no. I'm here today to answer your questions and to keep you informed about what you need to know as it pertains to state issues. And I have a very special guest with me today here in the studio. I have Ryan McAdams. And Ryan is actually, I'm not sure why you've decided to do this. Maybe you can tell us, Ryan. Ryan wants to be the Republican nominee for the 4th Congressional District.
That's right.
Ryan, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's really great to be with you. It's been fun to be here at the radio station today and to hang out a little bit and to meet the Lee brothers. But my name is Ryan McAdams. I live in Providence Forge in Charles City. And I'm running because I feel like that God has called me to run and that he's prepared me and that he's given me the experience and the background to be able to make a difference here in the 4th Congressional District. I'm a pastor in Williamsburg. I'm happily married, my wife Jade, and my 4 beautiful children. And God has called me to be a part of the community for my whole adult life, to be intimately involved in various capacities. In addition to being a pastor, I've been a businessman. I've been a social worker. I've been on the board of Salvation Army. I've even taught JV baseball. But 2 years ago, the Lord gave me a dream and told me that I needed to run for elected office. And so a series of circumstances has unfolded that has led me to this place. And like you said, it's an interesting it's an interesting challenge. Politics is not something that I saw in my future. And I know that that's the case for you too, Amanda.
Absolutely. If we knew that, we would run far away, wouldn't we?
Run far away.
That's awesome. What do you think has been the biggest challenge at this point?
I think I would say probably the family, and you understand that.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's the level of busyness to campaigning that is just very challenging. That I just can't be at home as much as I want to be at home right now because there's meetings all the time, meeting with people or out in the community, which I really enjoy that. I love people. So the meetings themselves I enjoy.
Right.
But being away from my family, I don't always enjoy that. But the good thing, we're a very close family. We homeschool our children. I've got 2 boys, 2 girls, 14, 12 are my boys, and 10 and 9 are my girls. And they like to come with me.
And actually, I saw you at the Chester Patriots
That's right.
meeting that they had,
Last
and I saw your daughter with you.
Yeah, that was my youngest daughter, Kayla. And, I don't force them to come like maybe some politicians do.
Yeah,
you got to come so
like
it looks
Amanda
good.
Chase. I do that sometimes. A couple times a year, I force my kids to come to the political events. But anyway, they survive, and they're better people for it, right?
That's right.
But
yeah.
she had a good time.
Yeah, she did. And she likes people too. She's one of those that likes to kind of be in the spotlight a little bit. She's the youngest and she's very talented. And so she likes to come. But all my kids like to come. Last night I was in Henrico at a GOP meeting, and my oldest son, John Mark, he said, "Hey, I want to go with you tonight." And I don't really say, "Hey, who wants to go?" They just kind of volunteer to go. Now, sometimes nice. I do, but they like to be around and maybe get out of the house and get away from homeschooling too.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's great. Our family actually homeschooled for 9 years, and education is very important.
Yes.
To a lot of people out there. I know there are a lot of homeschool families that are in the district. We have a lot of private school families. We have a lot of public school families. I know our family has done a bit of all the above. My kids are all in public school now. And education is an important issue as you run for Congress. And I know that tell us about your thoughts on Common Core.
Yeah, well, Common Core obviously is a disaster.
Right.
And even just the mechanics of Common Core is a disaster. I mean, you look at the way that they're trying to teach our kids math and how it's just everything's turns upside down. And so Common Core, is really more of a propaganda instrument, I think, and trying to get our kids on a track that I don't think is productive, but is also leading them down a road that I think is going away from what really America stands for. So I'm definitely against Common Core, and I'm really against the federal government being involved in education. And so, I mean, I although there's things that we can do on the federal level, we still obviously have the Department of Education, but I think that education is something that, number one, should be in the hands of parents. And so I believe in school choice. I believe in educational savings plans and families being able to take federal money that they're paying taxes, and they'll be able to do with that money whatever they feel is the best interest of their children. And so, but I think that education should be really in the hands of the local and the state level. And so as far as running for Congress, I mean, people ask me, what do you feel about the Department of Education? I think there's departments like the Department of Education that really needs to be reduced and ultimately maybe removed, because it's not a part of the core functions of the federal government. That should be close to the people. We should not have some mandate like Common Core that is spread across every school district across America. We should allow our local and state government be able to decide, and ultimately our parents decide how our schools, our children are going to be educated.
Very good. And I know one thing that we talk about in the state legislature is that your zip code should not determine
That's right.
the level of education that you have. So that's great. Now, I also found out in reading your biography that you were Virginia State player in baseball your senior year. And in fact, you earned a scholarship to VMI.
That's right. Yeah, I don't try to play that up too much, but I think it's something good for people to know about me, because that was something that I really took a lot of pride in as a high school student. I loved baseball, and I still do love baseball. I don't have as much time to follow it, but yeah, I was a state player of the year. I went to Lafayette High School in Williamsburg. I moved to Virginia when I was 16 from California.
Wow.
And which that's a story in and of itself, and what's happened.
You escaped, maybe.
I escaped, and that's really what it was. If you were to ask my mother and my stepfather, they were escaping,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw kind of the writing on the wall. And we don't think about California as being a Republican state, but at one time it was. We think that Ronald Reagan came out of California, was a governor of California, Richard Nixon. So California isn't always hasn't been what it is today, and it's a tragic example of where progressive politics and the left want to take the whole nation, and it's not a good story.
You're exactly right, and I feel like that the left has used the educational system in some ways against us.
Yes,
and in fact, I will tell you, there was a college. I won't mention the name of the university, but it was a public university. And I had a constituent who is a college student who sent me a copy of their sociology exam. And on there, one of the questions had to do with the definition of "Make America Great Again." What exactly does that mean? And the professor's interpretation of that had to deal with white supremacy.
Mm.
And that is just ridiculous. And there were a number of questions that were geared that way, to the point where I called the university president.
Good for you.
And confronted him with that issue. And I'm thankful to say that teacher is no longer at that university.
Wow.
But we have to understand and know what our kids are learning in school, and they're that is our role and our job. And we homeschooled for a while, and you homeschooled right now. And I think it is critical in shaping a nation, the future, the next decade, the next generation, that thinking, that education be first and foremost. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about, let's see how much time we have here. We've got 1 minute before we go into a break. So let me just ask you this. Let's talk about a time in which you faced adversity and how you were able to overcome that situation.
In 1 minute?
In 1 minute. I'm testing your cut to the chase skills.
Well, good. Okay, so I went to VMI on a scholarship. So there's a good example. I mean, the rat line, all you cadets out there, you understand the challenge that the first year of VMI is. And I finished my year. I was on scholarship there, played baseball, but that was a very challenging year. I mean, I graduated when I was 17 from high school, so I was a very young man. And I didn't really know what I was getting into when I went to VMI.
Yikes!
But that was a very much of a challenge to me. I mean, even though I was a disciplined person, to have to follow the regime of getting up for reveille and you know the educational rigor that was required in addition to the being an athlete.
Absolutely.
In Division I baseball.
Well, you're going to want to tune
challenging.
in with Ryan McAdams. We'll be right back right after the break. Stay tuned. All right, thanks for tuning in today for Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. I'm State Senator Amanda Chase. This is our weekly town hall and radio show, and I welcome you to call in with questions for Ryan McAdams, who is running for the Republican nomination for the 4th Congressional District. Say that 5 times without stuttering. The number here is 804-454-1366, 804-451-1366. And I'm sure Ryan would love to answer your questions.
Yes.
So
Please
give him a call. So, you know, a lot of people, we cover a large listening audience here. So I just want to put a date on everybody's calendar. Tuesday, June the 12th, there is going to be a Republican primary.
That's right.
Tuesday, June the 12th, between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. So regular, it's just going to be like a regular election, but it's not going to be cold. It's going to be in the middle of summer.
Nice. No more snow.
That's right. I'm
No
done
more
with
sleep.
snow. I'm ready for spring. So if you live in the 4th Congressional District, you will have the opportunity to vote at your regular voting precinct. Again, Tuesday, June the 12th, in a Republican primary. Now, how do you know if you live in the 4th Congressional District? Well, one thing you can do is you can Google, because I know y'all know how to do that.
But Wikipedia is wrong. Just so you know.
It is.
It's wrong.
It has the old lines.
It has the old lines. So don't follow Wikipedia.
So you can go, who is my legislator?
Right.
And it'll take you to the right place. But tell us about your district. Tell us the 4th Congressional District.
What it is.
Where, what cities and counties?
So in 16, it was redistrict. And so now it includes Charles City, which is where I live in Providence Forge. And then it comes west into Richmond and includes the eastern part of Henrico. And then it goes, kind of the line goes, up towards Chamberlain. And then it kind of it skirts the fan and it goes south. And then it goes through Chesterfield and the line kind of goes to the west side of 95 all the way to North Carolina. And then from there, it's pretty much goes east, and it's everything below the James River except for Isle of Wight. So why Isle of Wight, was carved out, that's what's called gerrymandering.
Yes, we've talked about that a few times on the show. Very good.
So that's essentially, if you can picture that, that's essentially what the 4th District is. So the main population centers are the Richmond area and the South Side, and then Chesapeake.
Fantastic. We have 2 callers that have questions for you.
Fantastic.
So we're going to start off with Dave from Colonial Heights, and he has a transportation question for you.
Wow.
Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call, Senator. And just so everybody knows, Senator Chase is my senator. I think she is probably the best senator in the General Assembly at this point.
God bless you. Thank you.
But my question is about transportation. The last 2 days, I drove from Colonial Heights to Portsmouth, and along 460, I've probably seen 5 to 7 police officers there. And 460 goes from eastern Virginia to western Virginia, and it goes through your district to be Mr. Congressman to be. And can we make 460 a highway and bypass some of these small towns that are just there to collect revenue from people passing through?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I do see what you're saying because traveling around the district, when you get on the south side there aren't a lot of thoroughfares that are very easy to, 460 is the one for sure. As far as, that's a big question. Number one, you might not like this answer, but I like transportation being in the hands of the state. And that's another area. I definitely believe in limited government, particularly in the federal level. So the problem with getting the federal, and this is, I'm not trying to skirt around your question, but hopefully you hear my heart on this, is the problem with the federal government being involved in things like transportation is it gets so bogged down. The money that is spent on environmental surveys and the EPA and how they're seeing things, and it's much more efficient, it's much more cost effective, and it's much more local and state need based when it's done on the local level and the state level. So I think that you're right to say that, boy, it would be nice to have a thoroughfare that would connect the south side of the James River in a better way. But as far as running for Congress, I would like to see those decisions to be in the hands of the state and the local government. And actually, I think that the Department of Transportation, I'd like to see that even diminished, like I said about the Department of Education. That's definitely one that I think would be better utilized. All these type of questions would be better utilized in the hands of the states.
All right, Dave, and I'm going to just add a little 2 cents on that. So there's something called Smart Scale that the state put in place right before I got in office in 2015. And if you're dealing with the interstates, it's typically maintained by the state. Right. And then you have the localities, the secondary roads. Those are taken care of by your Board of Supervisors. So what system we have in place is one that is using metrics. So the Board of Supervisors can make recommendations for which roads can be put in this matrix. It's submitted to VDOT, and it's prioritized and chosen that way. So I don't know if that's an issue that you'll get to handle, but I know if President Trump comes through with with infrastructure needs, he was talking about investing in our infrastructure. Sir, would you support something like that?
Yeah, I would like to see it more like block grants in a sense. Yes. To give the money, if we're going to do it, let's not have the federal government be in control of it. Let's have the state government.
I'm okay with that.
Yes. Let's put it in your hands.
That's
Amanda.
Right. I'm happy to spend the money. Use it. I'm very good at that.
I know that you'll use it wisely. But I definitely believe, in our transportation systems, very, very important, clearly, and for commerce and for other reasons. But I do believe that it should be in the hands of the states. And so I would be for, some type of package as far as infrastructure, but I would like to see that more block grant, which block grants just basically means that it's given to the states to be able to determine what, how they want to use it to the best of their needs.
Right. And it kind of caps the need instead of having...
caps the needs.
Okay, Dave, thanks so much for calling in from
Dave.
Colonial Heights. We've got Chris from Chesterfield with another question for Ryan. Chris, thanks for calling in today.
Hey, Amanda, you're my senator too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, how are you? Listen, here's the thing. I got to be real careful how I say this because I definitely want to admit to you that I'm not a averse person on homeschooling, but I do have an older brother who decided to do it. It didn't go as well as I think he wanted to, but I know that does play out well for some. But here's my real question. When you say, and I hear you say you're homeschooling your kids, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Part of me automatically, when I hear that, goes, why doesn't this guy come to public school and voice his opinions and work within the system and better the schools from within? Why go outside of it? And I guess what I really want to hear from you is an understanding of how do you, I'm not sure if it's impossible, but how do we get those people back under the umbrella? Because I personally believe all my boys went to public school, in Chesterfield. I was very happy with it. Whether you go to private school or whatever school you choose, that's up to you. But I just feel like you're paying taxes You should be able to get the benefit of your tax dollars. And I'd like to hear someone like yourself who's doing it. I'd like you to answer to that as to what happened to ostracize you so much that you feel like, or do you feel like you can come back?
Hey, Chris, we have like 30 seconds before we go to a break, so we're going to answer your question very quickly, but if we don't finish it, we're going to finish answering your question on the other side of this break. So you hang on there, okay? Stay tuned. Okay. So do you want to start to answer that?
I'll start to answer real quick, just in the few seconds here. But I would say this, just to start, to introduce it, is that every family is unique with their needs for their child. And I'll tell you the uniqueness of my situation here in just a second.
All right. Hey, great job. We'll be right back, Chris. Stay tuned for Cut to the Chase.
All right.
All right, thanks. We are back from the break on Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase and Ryan McAdams, who is seeking the Republican nomination for the 4th Congressional District. And we are going to get back to Chris from Chesterfield's question as it relates to homeschooling. Tell us your thoughts.
Great question. I appreciate your candor, Chris. So like I said, I think that we just have to value the uniqueness of every family. I'll tell you our story. I've been in ministry for 20 years, and over the years, we've traveled around some. We've been in Kansas City. We've been in Chicago. Most of our time's been in Virginia, but we have traveled around. There was a thought that even at one time that we might go on the mission field and on foreign fields. And so we made a decision. My son, early on, my oldest son, was in public school. I went to public school. My wife went to public school.
Right.
But for us, we thought that the best option for our children, and this was a good school system in Williamsburg, James City County. But we decided, you know what? My wife taught kids when she went to William Mary. She taught kids when she got out of school and things like that. So she always wanted to try that and make that investment in our children, and I honor her for that. And so for us, it was with all that being factored in about our ministry, the potential of training our kids, getting that going before we potentially went on the mission field, which we never have done. But that's how it started for us, and we thought it was a good option. We also didn't like some of the things that was going on in the school as well. Some of the things that kids were being taught were not in line with our values, and we decided, you know what? We're going to invest in our children. We're going to try it. And at first it was like, let's see if we can do this. And it is a big commitment. It is a big financial commitment too, because right now we don't get the money that our taxes pay for if you're homeschooling.
Oh, I'm aware. Yeah. And I would say this to you. My brother that tried it, he's retired Navy. Unfortunately for him, neither nor him or his wife had any, previous experience instructing kids, And I have to be honest with you, when he said it to me, I was like, man, you gotta be kidding me. You don't want to. And I have to say this to you. He said something to me before, and it's interesting. I think, like anything, if you've got the tools for it, you can do it.
Right.
If you've got the energy and you understand it, you can do it. But what I would say to you is this: I hope, this is my hope. I'm not a super religious person. I was raised Baptist, but this is what I hope. I hope guys like yourself, over time, see the benefit of coming back into our system, because I really want those voices heard, and I think sometimes and I don't think it's purposeful, but I always use this argument. I say, look, people come to this country without a fundamental understanding of the language, and they're able to navigate our school systems and get a huge benefit out of it and go on to college and so forth. So if that's the case, then I understand what you're saying about things in the school you may not like, and I respect that. But I'm always interested to talk to homeschoolers, because I always want to leave in their minds this idea that we're less because your voice isn't there.
Chris, let me ask you a quick question. Do you feel like God should be taught in our public schools? I mean, do you think that we should have God back in our public schools? Just curious.
Here, Amanda, that's a loaded question, but here's what I'll tell you about that. I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to say no, because we can't control.
Are you a politician?
I don't want 16 religions being taught at school while I'm trying to get my kid educated. And what happens in America is when you open the door for one, people are only thinking about Christianity fundamentally, but you and I both know that won't be the only one. And unfortunately, I think those matters are best handled in within spiritual institutions like church. I'm not telling you can't do it, because my son goes to Chesterfield and they have prayer circles and stuff like that. And, you're allowed to do what you want to do. So that's fine by me. But I always want schools to concentrate on academics. And, Amanda, I think you remember a time when we grew up where we were scared to death of our principals. And, they ran the school and we had respect for our teachers and so forth. Those things, in my opinion, come from parents. And my 3 boys, one of which served as a page for you last year.
Oh, fantastic.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Good job.
And I think one of your sons works for a local restaurant where I go every Saturday.
There you go. That's the other one, right? And
They're good boys.
Oh, you guys know? That's cool. That's, each other.
The one who's a page actually is going to Germany for a year on exchange program.
Wow.
Awesome.
So he's 15. And it's funny because we were watching John Adams together. And when John Quincy goes to Russia at 12, he was very little. He said, Dad, I might do that. And I said, well, apparently you are going to do that. But anyway, I want to share that. I want to say this emphatically. Although I'm not, a big C Christian, I was raised Baptist. It bothers me so much when I see religious people who really are faithful not sort of extricating themselves from our public domain. I don't want to see that. I really want to see them back in the fold. And I know it's naive of me, but I really want to hear that voice, because I think we're all better for it.
Chris, thank you so much for the call, by the way. And you've done a great job as a father. And now I know, I don't know you, but I do know your boys, and they speak their example. They speak very highly to who you are as a father. And, I will say this as a religious person, I want to respect that, there are people that have different ways they want to raise their kids. And I think the best thing we can do is give opportunity to the parent, to give more options. We're always talking about being for choice. And so I think that's what we want to do, is encourage choice. Let me tell you, there are times when one of my kids is extremely, I love all my kids. Some are more challenging than others, and one was particularly challenging as the parent. And I was looking forward to not homeschooling at that particular point. God bless America. But anyway, whenever we come back, Chris, we are going to talk about our national debt and how it's risen to over $17 trillion. And let's hear what Ryan McAdams has to say about that. I can't wait to
Ryan,
hear.
thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks
Chris.
for calling
Good question.
in, Chris.
Appreciate that.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Cut to the chase with Senator Chase and Ryan McAdams. Thanks for tuning in to this week's weekly town hall with Senator Chase. And this week I have Ryan McAdams, who is seeking the Republican nomination for the 4th Congressional District. And I have 2 subjects I want to go into. We're going to talk about the national debt rising to over $17 trillion. And I also want to really quickly get to immigration issues, because I know those are 2 top issues. And we've only got 15 minutes left. So I've got Ann from Petersburg, who has another school question. Ann, I'm going to let you ask your question, and then I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to let you go so he can quickly answer your question, and then we're going to go to our next topic. So Ann from Petersburg.
Hi, Amanda. It's Ann. And we homeschooled, and this question relates to it sort of, but the question is, I've served on a task force with Congressman McEachin for the last year about racial disparity and expulsions. We have a real problem in the public schools, which is why a lot of us homeschooled. But Petersburg has an elementary school, Jeb Stuart Elementary School. They have not passed accreditation, the SOLs, for 13 years. And what can be done about this? People worry about homeschoolers, but I have to say that there are a lot of public schools, and that there's certain pockets that have some real problems going on. And right now, Congressman McEachin is kind of looking at these things, trying to figure out a plan. So I just want to know, if Ryan has any ideas.
Fantastic, Ann. Thanks so much. Ryan, do you want to answer that?
Thank you, Ann, for that question. I have a real heart, obviously, for our children and our education. A lot of our public schools are a real disaster, especially in the inner city around Richmond and Petersburg. And first of all, though, just principally, I believe that that's a state and local level as far as educating our kids. But we have to really look at the policies that have created these type of problems. I think one of them is that there needs to be a merit-based process for our teachers. Why? And there needs to be some type of merit-based qualifications to continue to be, in an administration of a school that has not been passing their SOLs for 12 years, like you said. I think you said that. So I think that the problem is, and this is the bureaucracy in general on the federal level as well, is that it's really hard to fire people that really aren't getting the job done. And the biggest asset that we have, the biggest treasure that we have, is our children. And so if they're not being educated and if they're not being certified and passing their SOLs, then that's a real problem. There has to be accountability. And so pouring more money in, just like any bureaucracy that we see on the federal level, is not going to solve the problem if we don't have accountability. And if we're spending a lot of money for overpriced figureheads, administrators, and that's really what is happening a lot these days. I mean, a superintendent can make $250,000, yet their school systems could have schools like what you're saying that aren't meeting the standards that are necessary to educate our children. So I think there needs to be accountability, to answer your question. I think we really need to look at that and have it to be a merit-based teaching qualifications so that our children get the education that they need in the public school.
Very good. Thank you for answering that question. So we're going to switch over to the national debt, which has risen to over $17 trillion. And, that unrestrained spending poses a real threat to our future and to our kids, to the next generation. Do you support raising the debt ceiling? And if so, under what circumstances?
No, I don't support raising the debt ceiling. They keep saying that we're going to balance our budget. Congress keeps saying this. And then we just keep blowing up our budgets. I mean, we just saw it happen, right? And I don't know about you, Amanda, but I was pretty upset about that.
Right.
And if you go on our Facebook, Ryan McAdams for Congress, you can see a video that I put up on about that. But I think it's disastrous. And I think what we need to do is we need to cut our spending. And, we don't really like to talk about that on the federal level in government and in Congress. I mean, they just blew up the budget with $700 billion.
Right.
And for all these things that we really can't afford, what family does that? I mean, if you're in debt, like we are, $20 trillion and upwards of that, with all of entitlements and everything that our nation owes, that's on the books, that's not even factored in.
Yeah, we basically, our hide gets sold to China, and to the Federal Reserve and everybody else, and that's another real threat.
It's a threat to us.
That we have to take a look at.
And to our children, talking about our children.
That's right.
We're saddling our children with unsustainable debt. And so I think it's really irresponsible. And it's both sides. This isn't a partisan thing. This is both sides of the aisle to me. I was upset, to be honest, with the president that he signed that. My hope that it passed through Congress, and it was signed on both houses, but then it went to the president's desk, and he had the opportunity to veto that and send it back and to say, no, I'm not going to support this. And you're going to need to come up with a budget that is in line with his agenda. Because a lot of those things, like Planned Parenthood being funded, $500 million.
Right.
The American people put Trump into office to do some things.
Right.
To secure the border, like you said. The border wall wasn't funded. Did you know, this is really interesting, there was, I think, $30 million that was given to immigration and border security. But none of that money was going to actually build the wall. The new prototypes of the wall that Trump they've been testing, and some incredible stuff that they've come up with. None of that money could be used for the new wall. It could only be used, as far as I know, to patch up the old walls. And so, what is going on up there? And so I have a real problem with that. I believe that we need to balance our budget. We need to have fiscal responsibility. We need to slash the bureaucracy and the fat and the pork barrel and all that stuff that is not really helping Americans. It's not really creating jobs except for the bureaucracy.
Right. Absolutely. The closer you get to Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
There are more federal employees.
Why has Northern Virginia expanded so much as far as the population growth? It's the bureaucracy.
Right.
It's because of all the job growth of the bureaucracy and all these jobs in the government. And that's why really Virginia has changed. The demographic of the voting population has changed in Virginia, and it's gone blue is because of Northern Virginia. And that's the bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
And that's our tax money being spent.
So let me just ask you, do you support granting amnesty to illegal immigrants?
No, I don't. Because and I think that right now the narrative is often that it's not compassionate to have that stance, right? But I believe it's compassionate.
Well, it depends on who you're talking to.
Okay, if you're talking to the national media,
right,
and the left, then it's uncompassionate to actually prioritize American citizens over illegals. But I think that's exactly what our government should be doing. Is we should be prioritizing what is good for the American citizen and not what is good for criminals. Let's be honest about
people who don't follow the law.
People who don't follow the law. And we are the most generous nation on earth as far as legal immigration.
Right.
We
do allow people to come here legally.
And we're the most generous nation on earth. Almost 1 million a year, or more than 1 million a year, of legal immigrants that we allow in through the legal process. And so to say that we're uncompassionate because we want our laws to be followed, we want our borders to be secure, we want our cities to be secure. You know, it's always interesting the language that is used by the progressives. They call it a sanctuary city.
Yeah, I've seen a few bills like that before the General Assembly this year.
Is it really a sanctuary city? No, it's not. It's
a sanctuary for criminals.
For criminals, but not for the American citizen.
Right.
It's unsafe. They're using our resources and our school systems. Did you know that it costs the American taxpayer about $28,000? No, $24,000, I believe is the figure, for every illegal household. So if we have, who knows what the real number is, let's just say 3 million illegals. In Virginia, it's $2.5 billion it's costing Virginians to support illegal aliens, illegal immigrants in Virginia. $2.5 billion, not million, $1 billion. That's our school systems, because our schools take care of any children that are coming into the school system. They're gonna educate them. That includes some welfare benefits and the like. I mean, that's a lot of money that you and I are paying to support those that are here illegally. So I think that we just can't afford it. Going back to our budget, we just can't afford it.
Right.
We have to tighten the belt.
We see that here in Chesterfield, even in this area, about the resources. And I know I was talking to Carrie Coyner, and she was telling me that they had to allocate additional resources for those folks who are secondary language. English is their secondary language.
More resources that we don't have.
It's it's definitely an issue. So let's. Do you support Trump's wall with the Mexican-U.S. border? Do you think we should be building that one?
Well, I mean, as people say, well, it's not all a wall. Well, that's true. Okay, so there's different parts of the border. Some of it's not going to be a wall, but the point is, yes, to secure the border. I mean, a good example of what just happened with 1,000 people coming up in a caravan. Now, if that wasn't stopped by the Mexican government, you would have all these people coming up, and our government would have had to.
Welcome to the final segment of Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. We're going to do our final wrap up here. And I really would like to talk about our Second Amendment, protecting gun rights. Retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens rattled the National Rifle Association when he called for the repeal of the Second Amendment, which he said is antiquated. John, do you agree with that statement?
Ryan,
what did I say?
John Adams. No, I don't know.
It could be John Adams, McAdams. I've had John Adams on my show.
Yeah, I mean, not only was it rattling the NRA, but I mean, any Constitution-loving American it rattles. I mean, when he's 96 years old. Let's honor the man for being a Supreme Court justice. But I mean, isn't it interesting that we haven't heard from him for years? I think 20 or 30 years or whatever it's been.
Right.
and all of a sudden they roll him out, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. And then he comes up with this statement, and I think it really shows about where they want to take this. They want to really take away our Second Amendment rights, and those aren't just government-given rights; those are God-given rights. And we know the Bill of Rights. It says that we have inalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence, and then now we have the Bill of Rights that spell out some of those inalienable rights, including our right to defend ourselves. And so what's happening is obviously the weaponizing of these events, like it happened down at Parkland and in Florida and Sandy Hook and different places, and their agenda is to disarm us. And we know that. I think most Americans, a majority of Americans, let's just say that, realize that the end game is that they want to disarm us. And so it's not surprising. But I think in times like this, we can kind of see really what is being exposed as what their agenda really is.
You know, the thing that gets me, it's sometimes I think we look at this so myopically when we're talking about the Second Amendment. We look at, well, you know, someone might say, well, I'm not comfortable with using a gun. But if you think about it, the First Amendment is just as important as the Second Amendment. It is your responsibility as a citizen to be prepared for war if we are invaded from outside, from another country. You know, we hear about terrorist cells, even within our own country. And are we prepared? Yeah. So the responsibility should be on us as American citizens to learn how to, and to carry a weapon. I mean, look at Israel.
That's right.
And how they educate their everyday citizens. I mean, you have a period of time when you have to serve in the army there so that you can defend your country. Because let me tell you, a lot of people say, you know, I'm going to rely on the police to defend me.
Yeah.
How long does it take? I'm telling you, those of you who live in the country can say,
that's right.
If I dial 911, how long will it take someone to get here? I can tell you stories.
Sure.
You know, we do have limited resources. And then what happens if we get in an emergency into a crisis nationally where all of our resources are expended? And there you are. Folks, it is so important for you to learn how to exercise your Second Amendment rights. Know the law. Inform yourself.
Yeah.
Instead of telling other people, I'm not comfortable with you having a weapon. Well, you need to get educated. You need to educate yourself on how to use a weapon. The best protection against fear is knowledge.
Have you ever heard the quote, maybe you have, of, I think it was Yamamoto. He was the Japanese general. And he said, he says, we can never invade America because every one of them is armed. And if we were to invade America, there would be an American with a weapon coming out of every bush.
That's a great way to end the show. Great quote.
I mean, that is the reality. And that's what it was there for. Not only to defend our persons and our possessions and our families, which, as you just said, is a real need in and of itself, but also to keep us safe from any foreign or, in the case of terrorism, domestic threat.
Absolutely.
And the founders, it's clear that they had that in mind. That's why they mentioned militia. Militia meant that citizens should be armed.
Ryan, thank you so much for coming on today. Ryan McAdams.
Thank you.
He is running for the Republican nomination for the 4th Congressional District. What is your website?
Ryan McAdams for Congress.com.
And you can get more information there. Tune in next
Friday
for the weekly town hall. Cut to the chase with Senator Chase.